What would you do if your longtime crush suddenly became your roommate? Pause. And what if, on the very first night, he told you that you couldn't sleep anywhere but in his bed? For safety, whisper tone. This isn't just another BL webtoon or yaoi romance. It's a story of temptation, tension, and love hidden in the smallest everyday moments. Welcome to a manhwa love story where friendship and desire collide under the same roof. The story begins on a bustling college campus, alive with the energy of students chasing dreams, late-night study sessions, and the quiet promise of romance tucked between lectures and coffee runs. Our protagonist, Minho, is the kind of boy everyone knows, but not everyone notices. He's friendly, reliable, always smiling at others but never daring to speak too much about himself. Minho is the guy who helps classmates with notes, who organizes group projects, but who secretly carries a heart full of unspoken feelings. Because for the past 2 years, he's been in love with someone he believes is far beyond his reach. That someone is Jae-hyun, the campus star. Tall, confident, effortlessly charming, with a smile that could melt through the iciest day. He's not only the ace of the basketball team, but also the boy everyone seems drawn to. Professors admire him, students want to befriend him, and countless admirers line up just for a chance to get close. But for Minho, Jae-hyun isn't just the golden boy of campus. He's the secret crush that keeps his heart beating a little too fast. Their paths have always brushed but never fully collided. A polite nod in the cafeteria, a smile exchanged during a shared elective. Nothing more, nothing less. Minho thought it would always stay that way, his feelings locked away, his crush untouchable, until fate decided otherwise. The announcement came without warning. One morning, as Minho hurried across the campus courtyard with his backpack slung over one shoulder, a notice board near the library drew his eye. A sheet of paper flapped against the wooden frame, the ink bold and unmistakable. Dormitory Building B, temporary renovations, all residents to be relocated effective immediately. At first, Minho blinked at it, half convinced it was some kind of mistake. His dorm building, renovated, now. The semester had barely reached its midpoint, and he had only just begun to find some rhythm in his days. But the words were clear, and when he joined the line forming at the administration desk, the truth settled heavily into his chest. Every student in Building B was being reassigned, every single one. The lobby buzzed with tension. Voices overlapped, some groaning about the inconvenience, others thrilled by the prospect of better rooms. Suitcases rolled across the tiles, boxes piled high, the air thick with frustration and anticipation. For Minho, it was chaos. He clutched his reassignment slip like it was a verdict, his palms sweating as though the paper itself carried some hidden weight. With each step toward the counter, his thoughts raced. Who would his new roommate be? Would he end up stuck with someone loud and careless, or perhaps alone, in a corner room where silence pressed too close? When his name was finally called, the staff member handed him the paper with a polite smile. Room 304, West Dorm. You'll find your new key at the office. Minho nodded, murmuring a thank you, though his voice barely registered above the noise. He stepped aside, unfolding the paper with careful fingers. His gaze swept the details, skimming until it landed on the line that mattered most. Assigned. Roommate. Jae-hyun Kang. The name hit him like a thunderclap. For a long, disbelieving moment, he just stared. His brain refused to process it, refused to reconcile the neat black letters with the storm suddenly tearing through his chest. Jae-hyun. It couldn't be. Surely this was a typo, some clerical mistake. The housing office wouldn't couldn't pair him, an ordinary, practically invisible student, with the Jae-hyun Kang. Everyone on campus knew Jae-hyun, the ace, the golden boy, tall, athletic, effortlessly charming. He wasn't just admired, he was adored. Professors praised his discipline, teammates celebrated his talent, classmates envied his ease. If the university had a crown prince, Jae-hyun wore it without ever seeming to notice. And now Min-ho was supposed to live in the same room as him. His chest tightened, his stomach dropped. The paper in his hand suddenly felt like it was burning. 1,000 memories flickered through his mind, glimpses of Jae-hyun on the basketball court, laughter ringing out as his teammates slapped him on the back. The way other students leaned in when he spoke, eager for a moment of his attention. And, though Min-ho hated to admit it, the way his own gaze sometimes lingered too long, tracing the curve of Jae-hyun's smile, the quiet kindness in his gestures. Feelings Min-ho had buried, feelings he had sworn never to let see daylight. Now, those same feelings threatened to rise, to expose him in the worst possible way. Because living with Jae-hyun meant proximity. It meant sharing space. It meant no hiding. The sound of rolling suitcases jolted him back to the present. Around him, students were bustling, heading toward their new assignments. Time was moving forward whether Min-ho was ready or not. He drew in a shaky breath, folding the paper carefully, as though neat edges could restore order to the chaos in his mind. It's fine, he told himself. This is temporary. Just until renovations are done. You can handle it. But even as he tried to convince himself, his heart hammered, refusing to listen. Later that afternoon, suitcase in hand, Min-ho found himself standing in front of the West Dorm. The building loomed taller than his old one, its windows gleaming in the afternoon light. Students filtered in and out, chatting in pairs or lugging belongings up the stairs. Each step he took up to the 3rd floor felt heavier than the last. The key in his pocket weighed like iron, his nerves buzzing like live wires. He rehearsed what he would say when the door opened, how he would introduce himself, polite, simple, nothing revealing. But as he reached room 304 and raised his hand to knock, his thoughts crumbled, because this wasn't just a new roommate. This was Jae-hyun, the boy he had watched from a distance, the boy whose very name made his chest tighten. He knocked softly. The sound barely carried, but within seconds the door swung open. And there he was. Jae-hyun stood framed in the doorway, casual in a simple t-shirt and sweats, yet carrying himself with the same effortless presence that turned heads on campus. His hair fell slightly into his eyes, his smile easy, as though nothing about this situation was out of the ordinary. "Min-ho, right?" he said, voice warm, the corners of his mouth lifting. "Guess we're roommates now. Make yourself at home." The words were simple, friendly, but to Min-ho, they carried weight enough to crush, because nothing about this felt ordinary, not the way Jae-hyun's gaze lingered just long enough to unsettle him. Not the way his own heart stuttered in response, not the way the room beyond suddenly seemed smaller, tighter, as though the walls themselves had drawn closer to force them together. Min-ho managed a nod, forcing his lips into something that might pass for a smile. He stepped inside, setting down his suitcase, and as the door closed behind him with a soft click, one thought thundered in his mind, echoing louder than the chaos outside. Nothing will ever be the same again. At first, Min-ho thinks it must be a mistake. Surely the housing office wouldn't pair an ordinary, invisible student like him with the most admired boy on campus, the ace of the basketball team, the student council's golden child, the one whose name every freshman whispered about in awe. Surely this had to be an error in the paperwork, some bureaucratic mix-up that would be corrected any minute. But the paperwork doesn't lie. His name, Kang Min-ho, printed neatly under the same dorm room number as Lee Jae-hyun. And so, with his suitcase in hand and his nerves buzzing like electricity, Min-ho stands frozen at the doorway of his new room. The door is already open, the faint scent of fresh laundry and cologne wafting out. Inside, the space is clean and orderly, one half already claimed. Books neatly stacked, uniforms hung with military precision, basketball shoes lined up as though they were trophies themselves. It is a room that radiates discipline and confidence. And then, there he is. Jae-hyun looks up from where he's unpacking a box, his tall frame bent slightly, dark hair falling casually into his eyes when he sees Min-ho. His lips curve into a smile so effortless it could melt glaciers, a smile that seems to reach his eyes, warm and unguarded, as though this moment isn't strange at all. "Ah," Jae-hyun says lightly, setting the box aside and straightening. His voice is smooth, warm, carrying the kind of easy confidence that makes people listen without realizing it. "Guess we're roommates now. Make yourself at home." The words are simple, casual, but for Min-ho, they land like thunder, because nothing about this feels ordinary. His pulse thunders in his ears and he forces himself to step inside, his suitcase wheels rattling against the floor. Every movement feels stiff, awkward, like a guest intruding where he doesn't belong. He tries to keep his eyes steady, tries not to stare at the boy he's admired from a distance for years, the boy whose laugh he's memorized, whose kindness he's envied, whose presence feels like sunlight even on the cloudiest day. "Thanks," Min-ho mutters, barely trusting his voice. He sets his suitcase down beside the unclaimed bed, his hands trembling slightly as he fumbles with the zipper. He doesn't dare look up. If he does, Jae-hyun might see everything written across his face, every unspoken secret, every reckless hope. But Jae-hyun doesn't seem to notice Min-ho's nerves. He leans casually against his desk, arms crossed, watching with that same easy smile. "You're a freshman, right?" he asks, his tone curious, but not overbearing. Min-ho nods quickly. "Yeah. Literature major." "Literature," Jae-hyun repeats, as though tasting the word. "That suits you." The comment makes Min-ho's ears burn. Suits me? How could Jae-hyun possibly know what suits him? He's just being polite, Min-ho tells himself. Just small talk. Don't read into it. Don't hope. But hope is dangerous, and it blooms anyway, curling quietly in the corners of his chest. As Min-ho unpacks, the silence stretches between them, not uncomfortable, exactly, but charged. Every glance feels heavier than it should. Every word Jae-hyun speaks carries hidden meaning, even when it's something simple like, "Do you need the desk light?" Or, "There's space in the closet if you want it." Min-ho answers quickly, politely, all the while fighting the urge to overanalyze. Was that kindness in his tone, or just habit? Did Jae-hyun look at him a moment too long, or was it only Min-ho's imagination? He busies himself with arranging his books, lining them up on the shelf like soldiers, anything to keep his hands moving so they don't betray how badly they're shaking. His mind races with the weight of the situation, because for Jae-hyun, this is just another roommate, just another semester. But for Min-ho, this is the boy who once lent him an umbrella in the pouring rain, back when they were nothing more than strangers passing on the same street. The boy whose laugh carried across the cafeteria, warm enough to reach Min-ho's lonely corner. The boy who, unknowingly, had become the center of every daydream Minho never dared to voice aloud, and now fate had placed them in the same four walls. The thought makes Minho's chest tighten. Every heartbeat feels like a drumbeat threatening to reveal the truth he's kept buried for years, that he's been in love with Lee Jae-hyun for as long as he can remember. He sneaks a glance as Jae-hyun crouches again to unpack another box. The lamplight catches on the line of his jaw, the easy strength in his movements, the quiet hum he makes under his breath as he works. Minho looks away quickly, heat rushing to his face. Don't stare, don't fall any deeper than you already have. But it's too late, because sharing a room means shared mornings, shared nights, shared silence, and shared laughter. It means existing side by side in the rhythm of daily life. It means Minho's carefully built walls of distance, walls of silence, are about to be tested in ways he never prepared for. He tells himself he can manage. He'll keep his head down, keep his heart hidden, and survive this semester with his secret intact. But when Jae-hyun glances up again, catching his eyes with a smile that feels far too genuine, Minho realizes just how impossible that will be. Because in that moment, one undeniable truth settles into the room like a shadow that neither of them can ignore. This is only the beginning. And for Minho, nothing will ever be the same again. The room itself is simple: 2 desks, 2 wardrobes, and 1 large bed pushed neatly against the wall. It's tidy, organized, a reflection of Jae-hyun's disciplined lifestyle. Minho sets his belongings down, carefully avoiding eye contact, telling himself this is fine. He can handle this. He just has to survive 1 semester without letting his feelings slip. But as night falls, everything changes. The dorm echoed with silence, broken only by the faint hum of campus life outside. The glow of a single desk lamp painted soft shadows across the room, its light catching the sharp lines of books, folded uniforms, and the neat arrangement of Jae-hyun's belongings. Minho stood awkwardly in the middle, clutching a spare blanket, every nerve in his body buzzing with restless energy. He told himself this was fine. He could manage. The floor wasn't so bad. It wasn't comfortable, but at least it gave him distance. Distance from the boy who had haunted his dreams for years. Distance from the crush he was now forced to share a room with. He knelt down, spreading the blanket carefully on the wooden floorboards, as though trying to convince himself this was perfectly natural. His heart thudded against his ribs, louder than the ticking clock on the wall. The thought of lying just a few feet away from Jae-hyun, of hearing his breathing through the night, was overwhelming enough. And then Jae-hyun's voice cut through the quiet, low, steady, almost commanding. "What are you doing down there?" The words froze Minho mid-motion. His head jerked up, eyes wide. Jae-hyun was leaning back against the headboard, one arm resting casually across his raised knee. His dark eyes, sharp even in the dim light, were fixed on him with a mixture of confusion and amusement. Minho stammered, his throat suddenly dry. I thought I'd sleep here. On the floor, it's fine, really. I don't need much." He expected Jae-hyun to laugh, maybe tease him a little, or at the very least shrug and let the matter drop. That was what made sense, what fit into the neat little box of Minho's expectations. Because in Minho's mind, someone like Jae-hyun belonged to a different world, a world of confidence, charm, and ease, a world that had no reason to collide with his own. But instead, Jae-hyun's expression shifted. The warmth in his smile faded, replaced by something quieter, heavier. His eyes lingered on Minho, unblinking, carrying a seriousness that made Minho's pulse stumble. It wasn't unkind, but it was firm, like the way a general might issue a command, or the way the sun insists on rising even when the night isn't ready to let go. And then Jae-hyun shook his head, slowly, deliberately, as though Minho's attempt to retreat to the floor wasn't just unnecessary, it was unacceptable. Before Minho could ask what he meant, Jae-hyun moved. The motion was calm, unhurried, but it carried weight. With a measured gesture, he lifted one hand and patted the empty space beside him on the bed. His voice followed, low and steady, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "No, sleep here, with me." The words fell into the silence like a stone into still water, rippling outward, altering everything they touched. For a moment, Minho's brain stalled. His body went rigid, disbelief crashing through him like a wave. He must have misheard. He must have imagined it. There was no way the campus star, the boy everyone admired, the one who shone so brightly he seemed untouchable, had just told him to share a bed. Yet Jae-hyun's gaze didn't waver. The air seemed to thicken, crackling with something Minho couldn't name. His heart pounded so hard it was almost painful, each beat demanding, what did he just say? What does he mean? His mouth opened, but no words came out. His throat felt dry, his thoughts tumbling over each other like stones in a storm. I can't, I'll be fine down here. Really. You don't have to. But Jae-hyun's hand remained where it was, resting lightly on the blanket, still patting the space beside him as though he were coaxing a stubborn animal. His expression didn't soften into teasing. It didn't harden into irritation. It just remained steady, calm, but resolute. "I said," Jae-hyun repeated, his tone softer this time, but no less insistent, "sleep here, with me. It's better, better." The word lodged itself in Minho's chest, confusing and electrifying all at once. Better for what? For comfort, for safety, for reasons Minho didn't dare imagine. He glanced toward the floor, the blanket he'd laid out hastily, the thin pillow he'd tried to convince himself would be enough. It suddenly looked pitiful, cold, lonely. A place that screamed, "You don't belong here." And then his eyes flicked back to the bed, to Jae-hyun, sitting there with his broad shoulders relaxed, his presence filling the room like gravity. The space beside him seemed impossibly close, impossibly dangerous, because if Minho lay there, if he let himself close that distance, he didn't know what would happen. His heart stuttered painfully. He could already feel the heat of Jae-hyun's body, even from a few feet away. Could imagine the way the mattress would dip, the way their breaths might mingle in the dark. He could imagine the temptation of proximity, the unbearable sweetness of something he was never supposed to have. He swallowed hard, his voice a whisper. "Why?" It slipped out before he could stop it. Small and raw, why was Jae-hyun insisting? Why would someone like him care whether Minho slept on the bed or the floor? For a moment, Jae-hyun didn't answer. His gaze softened, just slightly, as if considering how much truth to give away. Then he leaned back against the headboard, exhaling slowly. "Because," he said finally, "you're my roommate now, and I'm not going to let you sleep on the floor like some stranger. That's not how this works." The explanation was simple, too simple, but in that simplicity was something firm, something that left Minho without ground to argue. His chest tightened. To Jae-hyun, this might be nothing more than decency, a gesture of fairness, of hospitality, but to Minho, it felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, the world tilting beneath his feet. The silence stretched again, thick with unspoken questions. Minho's fingers curled at his sides, knuckles white as he wrestled with himself. Every instinct screamed to run, to retreat, to protect the fragile secret he carried in his chest, and yet his body betrayed him. Because even as his mind shouted no, his heart whispered yes. Even as fear clawed at him, another part of him, the reckless, hidden part, longed to step forward, to close the space, to see what it would feel like. He took a small step, then another. The floor creaked under his weight, each sound magnified in the stillness. Jae-hyun's eyes followed him, unreadable but steady, as though he'd known from the beginning that Minho would give in. Finally, Minho reached the edge of the bed. His legs trembled. His chest felt too tight to breathe. "This is crazy," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if the words were meant for Jae-hyun or for himself. "Maybe," Jae-hyun said softly, shifting just enough to make room. "But it's fine. Trust me. Trust me." The words slid into Minho's heart like a key turning in a long locked door. Hesitantly, he lowered himself onto the mattress. The blanket dipped beneath his weight, the proximity overwhelming. The faint scent of soap and clean cotton filled his senses. Heat radiated from Jae-hyun's body, close enough to touch but still a safe distance away, and yet it was too much, too close, too real. Minho lay stiffly on his back, staring at the ceiling, every nerve in his body alive. He could feel Jae-hyun's presence beside him, could hear the steady rhythm of his breathing, could sense the quiet watchfulness in the dark. His mind screamed with questions. What did this mean? Why did Jae-hyun care? Could he keep his secret safe when the walls between them had already begun to crumble? But for now, none of those questions had answers. For now, there was only the silence, the warmth, the impossible closeness, and the knowledge that nothing about this night would ever leave Minho unchanged. "What?" he whispered, his voice breaking into a half-laugh, half-question. But Jae-hyun didn't smile, his gaze held firm, unwavering. "I said sleep here, on the bed, not down there." Minho's pulse quickened, his thoughts spiraling. He couldn't do this. There was no way he could lie that close, their arms brushing, their breaths mingling. It would expose everything he'd tried so hard to hide, the crush he'd buried, the feelings he'd locked away. He forced a weak smile, trying to deflect. "It's fine, really. I don't want to bother you." But Jae-hyun leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping lower, tinged with something Minho couldn't quite place. Concern, maybe, or something darker. "It's not safe on the floor." Minho blinked, startled. "Not safe. It's just the floor." "The nights get cold," Jae-hyun replied firmly. "And the dorm isn't as clean as it looks. You'll wake up sick, or worse, covered in bugs." His eyes softened just a fraction. "I'm not letting my roommate go through that." The logic was simple, almost mundane. But the way Jae-hyun said it, the weight in his tone, made Minho's chest tighten. This wasn't teasing. This wasn't casual. It was protective. Still, Minho hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to run from this closeness. He lowered his gaze, his voice small. I don't want to intrude." Jae-hyun's answer came swiftly, almost like an order. "You're not intruding. You belong here." The words landed like a stone in Minho's chest, rippling outward, shaking the foundation of everything he thought he knew. "You belong here." Did Jae-hyun mean it literally, just as a roommate? Or was there something else, hidden between the lines? His legs wobbled as he stood, clutching the blanket like a shield. Every step toward the bed felt like crossing a battlefield, each movement weighed down by the thundering of his heartbeat. He could feel Jae-hyun's gaze following him, steady, patient, unyielding. Finally, he reached the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped slightly under Jae-hyun's weight, the scent of fresh laundry and faint cologne drifting upward. Minho hesitated, his hand gripping the blanket so tightly, his knuckles turned white. Are you sure? He asked one last time, his voice barely a whisper. Jae-hyun's lips curved, not into his usual bright smile, but something softer, quieter, almost gentle. I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't sure. With trembling fingers, Minho slid onto the bed, careful to keep as much distance as possible. He lay stiffly on the far edge, his body tense, eyes fixed on the ceiling as though it held all the answers he needed. But the mattress shifted again as Jae-hyun moved, lying down beside him. Their shoulders didn't touch, but the space between them was a thin line, fragile and electrifying. Silence filled the room once more, not the awkward silence of strangers, but the charged silence of something unspoken, something waiting. Minho closed his eyes, trying to calm his racing heart. He told himself this was just kindness, just Jae-hyun being considerate, nothing more. But then, in the darkness, Jae-hyun's voice came again, quiet, almost tender. Sleep well, Minho. And for the first time in years, Minho wondered if maybe, just maybe, his feelings weren't as one-sided as he believed. Because no matter how much he tried, he couldn't ignore the truth. Lying in Jae-hyun's bed didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like coming home. Minho's breath catches. What? Why? And then Jae-hyun answers with a single phrase that will change everything. For safety. The words hang in the air, confusing, tempting, impossible to refuse.